Hello and welcome to this episode of the Magnetic Woman Show. I'm your host, Lauren Joyce, and today I want to talk about the personal development to alt-right pipeline. And the reason why I'm bringing this up today is because of all of the intensity that we're seeing and feeling from the current administration. And I've been having a lot of conversations with other really incredible women leaders around how disheartening, heartbreaking, and challenging it's been over the last year, especially to see so many women in personal and spiritual development support this administration, have voted for this, and really just prop up a lot of the alt-right pipeline. And this is something that I've been really fascinated by for a long time, if we're being honest, because let's be honest, I, you know, we have seen the writing on the wall for a long time. And I actually think that personal development, spiritual development, was quite honestly the perfect breeding ground for a lot of people to fall down the alt-right pipeline. And I don't even want to call it a pipeline as much as it is like a just drop off of the slope. And if you're a woman and you're in and spiritual development, chances are you came to this space because you wanted to heal or fix something in your life or better your life. So I personally have been in the personal spiritual development space for over a decade now. And what brought me here was the fact that my dad passed away. He passed away when I was 25 years old, and I had no idea how to deal with the grief, how to handle loss. Quite honestly, I joined Mama Gina's School of Womanly Arts, which, if you know Regina Thomas Howard, she's brilliant. I joined her program because I wanted to emotionally and spiritually bypass grief. Like, if we're being honest, I joined her program because I thought, okay, she promises to teach me how to live a pleasurable life. Great. I won't even have to grieve. I can just kind of like hop, skip, and a jump over to living from pleasure. Obviously, that didn't happen. And her teachings, her programs taught me actually how to grieve in a very healthy way. But you have come to personal and spiritual development because you had a health crisis or a health issue, and you started seeking out more natural remedies, more diet, like nutrition based solutions. You've come to personal and spiritual development because you were unhappy in a career and you wanted to change, or you wanted to live like your most epic life, or you have historically worked in some kind of like overgiving, overfunctioning martyr role or position, and you wanted to learn how to make money doing what you love. You've come to personal and spiritual development maybe because you had a spiritual crisis, right? Like you were started to decondition from religion, or um, a lot of women end up in the containers that I have gravitated towards around feminine energy because you're burnt out. We live in a patriarchy capitalistic society, and the way that a lot of feminine energy stuff is framed is like softness and relaxation and being taken care of. And of course, when you're burnt out, overworked, living from trauma as a woman in the patriarchy, the way that a lot of feminine energy stuff is framed sounds incredible. Like, who doesn't want to stay home and bake sourdough bread and have be provided for, right? And so I truly believe that so many of the women who have found themselves in the alt-right pipeline, who have found themselves deep in conspiracy theories, who have found themselves supporting this administration, came to personal and spiritual development with good intentions. Like, of course. And then again, you're in a health crisis and you're looking for more natural or nutrition based remedies. And then all of a sudden, you are in a space where people are say like are anti-vaxxers and you're watching measles outbreaks happen and people spewing the fact that we shouldn't have vaccines, or you're overworked and exhausted as a woman and you hear about feminine energy and then all of a sudden you're surrounded by people who are going into a mega church and giving up their financial freedom to their husbands in order to be feminine with money. And so first and foremost I want to say like it's not your fault, because personal and spiritual development, right? Like when you first start to learn about manifestation and mindset work, energy work, healing through like looking at your limiting beliefs, it can feel like, oh my gosh, nobody told me this. And now I'm getting this information that was hidden from me. I'm getting this information that, you know, I never had before. And conspiracy theories deal in the same thing. Here's this information that's been hidden from you. Here's this stuff that you've never had access to, right? And so there's all like these people in personal and spiritual development are already primed to believe that they're not getting the whole picture, to believe that there's information that's been held back from us. And is that true? Yes, absolutely, right? It takes a lot of discernment, media literacy. It takes um, a lot of somatic work too to keep yourself from being sucked into these alt-right pipelines. And personally, I think the reason why I was never sucked into the alt-right, especially when it comes to feminine energy spaces, is because I was raised Catholic. And hear me out on this one. I was raised Catholic and went through 10 years of Catholic school, meaning I had religion class every day. We went to mass almost weekly, right? Like I thought about becoming a nun for a while. I was deep in the Catholic school. And Catholicism is not about evangelizing. Catholicism is showing your faith through your work. So I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine who also went through Catholic school. And I was saying, like, there I was in like fifth grade doing Meals on Wheels, meaning I was helping to deliver meals to needy parishioners, elderly parishioners who couldn't leave their home, right? Like this idea of like being of service to the community, but not for the sake of evangelizing, right? Like a lot of evangelical Protestant sects, it's like, oh, they go on these mission trips and it's all about converting people, versus a lot of Catholicism is showing our faith through works, showing our faith through our deeds. And it's less about like, how do we get you into the Catholic Church, and more about just like serving the poor and serving the community. Okay, so we have that. But then also, after 10 years of Catholic school and learning the history of Christianity, the history of the Catholic Church, I have spent the last probably 13 years of my life deconditioning from religion, right? And I think that there's a lot of people in personal and spiritual development who either didn't grow up religious or who have never really deconditioned patriarchal religion. And if you have not deconditioned patriarchal religion, you are more susceptible, in my opinion, to being in these alt-right pipelines, because you like don't see it coming. But for me, when I started to see this trend back in like 2019, 2020, a lot of polarity feminine energy stuff. I was like, this is going Christian nationalist. This is going like patriarchal Christianity. The second that somebody says feminine energy is submissive, you need to unsubscribe, tap out, run in the opposite direction. I'm going to be doing an entire other podcast on comparing and contrasting what is the true feminine versus patriarchal feminine. One of the top things is the feminine is not submissive ever, period, full stop. But we're told in a lot of patriarchal polarity spaces, a lot of polarity spaces that end up leaning Christian and putting you in that pipeline, We're told that the feminine is submissive, that it's under, less than, it needs to be led by the masculine, which is all bullshit, untrue. The feminine has mastered the art of surrender, but you can only surrender when you have boundaries, when you feel safe, when you feel like your voice is heard, respected, honored. That's not what's taught in a lot of polarity spaces. So again, I saw the writing on the wall back in 2019, 2020. And again, because I've done so much work on pulling apart patriarchal religion from my belief system, I was able to see, oh shit, a lot of polarity spaces are pushing out people who like went through a tantric training in Asia, lived in Bali, now live in Texas and go to a mega church. Like that pipeline is real, and it's real because you like they've never really looked at religion, right? And I think that there's also something to be said for the fact that a lot of white people, European ancestry, or people of European ancestry, have little to no connection to their lineage's pre-Christian spiritual practices that were based in the land, based in more of an egalitarian, matriarchal way, that were deep in ritual and the sacred feminine. And so, again, you're going to find in a lot of like personal and spiritual development spaces, they talk about God, but they never make it a point to be like, well, when we talk about God, we mean like the divine, which is non-gendered or female. Let's be real. If there's a creator, it's female. It's like, I was having this conversation with, again, my friend, and I'm like, you'll never find me worshiping a man, including a male god. Like, fuck that shit. Are you kidding? The feminine creates life, and you're telling me if there's a divine that the divine being that has created all life is male, but then it's flipped for everything? Like, no, no, right? But because so many white women have little to no connection to pre-Christian spirituality from their ancestral lineage, which is going to look different for everybody, right? Like, I personally come from Southern Italian, Irish, and some Germanic ancestry. I personally, especially over the last like 3 years, have been so deeply pulled to reconnect to pre-Christian Southern Italian and Celtic spiritual practices. And when you aren't doing that and you're in personal and spiritual development spaces and they're like the universe, God, and then he, and then like God provides. And again, the alt-right Christian nationalism has done a really good job because they also have like prosperity gospels, and they like say things that mirror some of the things that we hear in personal and spiritual development. So it feels like a very easy leap over, right? Just like leaping over into that. And then you get, into church, and there's a promise of community, and they really push this like patriarchal, heteronormative expression of a woman, which to me is contrary to personal and spiritual development, right? Because personal and spiritual development for women is about stepping into our power, stepping into our leadership. But then when you go into Christianity, and specifically evangelical mega churches, alt-right pipeline, MAGA, that version of the feminine, well, that's not the feminine, right? That version that they tell you is feminine is about submission. It is about being led. And again, what you have to understand, one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life is Patriarchy Stress Disorder. If you read one book this year, have it be that. Okay, if you read two books this year, have it be Patriarchy, Stress Disorder, and who cooked the Last Supper. Okay, those two books will change your fucking life. But Patriarchy, Stress Disorder brings up this brilliant point, which is as a woman living inside of the patriarchy, that is inherently traumatic. And we as women are all suffering from a version of PTSD from being a woman inside of the patriarchy, right? And when you realize that, you realize so much of what's being sold to you as being in your masculine is you living out a trauma response of being a woman in the patriarchy. The overworking, the overfunctioning, the planning everything, right? It's like, oh, to be in your feminine, like you want a man to come in and plan things. And this is gonna, like, I will die on this hill. You don't want a man to lead you. You want a man who likes you and wants to plan dates for you. You don't want him to lead you. Where the fuck is he leading you? The feminine always leads. She always has the vision and the desire. The feminine is more evolved spiritually than the masculine, period, full stop. You cannot convince me otherwise, right? But again, some of these things that are being told in patriarchal polarity spaces around the feminine sound really good because you're burnt out, you're living in a trauma response, you're exhausted from late stage capitalism, you haven't been taught how to own, move through, and process any of your emotions. So, this idea of just being like soft and sweet and like adored sounds amazing. Again, the feminine cannot surrender unless she has fucking boundary. You don't want to surrender to everybody. Are you kidding me? The feminine is open. You can't be open until you unleash your inner dark feminine who's ready to cut anything and everyone off that does not treat you the way that you desire or deserve. And so I just felt so called, and this is like my manifester splenic authority coming through here, to talk about how easy it is to be in personal spiritual development and get into these pipelines because these pipelines, quite frankly, are designed very, very well. Very well. And if you have found yourself in these pipelines, right? Maybe you haven't found yourself having voted for the current administration. And you're like, how the fuck did I get here? One, have compassion with yourself because, again, I think that these pipelines were designed specifically for people who want to better themselves, specifically for people who are like optimistic in a lot of ways. But you end up, again, you end up seeing a lot of these very harmful, bigoted, evangelical ideas coming into personal and spiritual development. Like you will not get me on board with all of this 3D to 5D talk. Do I think that human consciousness is evolving and evolving exponentially? 100%. But a lot of the 3D to 5D is still about getting up and out of the body. It's a lot of like rapture style, like end times energy. Mama, don't play that game, right? Like you decided to come into this lifetime at this time in history as a human with a physical body. Stop trying to escape it. That's actually the feminine. The true sacred feminine is about going down and in. It is about embodiment. It's not about escaping the body. So, and a lot of personal and spiritual development is led by men, which, if you know anything about me, you know that I don't believe in taking advice from men. I don't see men as experts in women's lives, period, full stop. And so I want to really invite you into like, who are you getting your information from? Who, like, the whole concept of biohacking for women is like the most unfeminine thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. Like, why are you trying to hack your body when instead, like, why are you cold plunging and spiking your cortisol instead of learning about your cycle, right? And again, like maybe you came into personal and spiritual development because you were having issues with your cycle. And then it's a very slippery slope to this idea that birth control should be banned. There is a middle ground between I'm learning more about my cycle, I'm choosing not to take birth control, and birth control should just be flat out banned. That is about controlling women and controlling women's bodies. This is a personal choice. And quite frankly, it's a personal choice made from a hell of a lot of privilege. And so I wanted to bring this up because I think that, I mean, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I've had a lot of anger, a lot of rage, a lot of grief, especially over the last year, watching so many women be in these pipelines and in my opinion, corrupt spaces, concepts, ideas that have really impacted and transformed my life. I had a serious issue over the last few years. Like, do I even use the word feminine anymore? Because I feel like this term has been co opted and corrupted by the alt right, by evangelicals, and by patriarchal polarity. And that's like, I mean, I could not use that word. I don't have a better word for it. And at the end of the day, like, am I going to let them write the entire narrative on the feminine, which is wrong? No. But it's been a very, like, challenging thing. And so chances are, if you have been a long time listener to my podcast, a long time follower, you have also struggled with watching a lot of women, maybe that you really looked up to, past mentors, current mentors, colleagues that you really respected, be taken to like sold down the river, not that, but being like taken down the river into the alt-right pipeline, being like swept away. That's what I mean, swept away into this thinking. And and if you're one of those people, and chances are if you're listening to this, you've probably already taken yourself out of it, but you might have some shame, some embarrassment, some like, how did I even get there? Hopefully this is enlightening. I also recently wrote a Substack article called A Letter to the Maha Women and the White Spiritual Women Who Voted for Trump, where I talk about like my opinion on what I think your next steps are. Um, I say all of this to say that if you're sitting there and you feel like places, spaces, concepts, ideas have been co opted by the alt right, co opted by like a version that is not true and actually is just misogyny in a bow or it's just the patriarchy dressed up, I really want to invite you to stand in your leadership and share your truth, your perspective, because of course it can feel like, at least this is how I felt around the concept of the feminine. Well, people only want this like watered down, diluted version of the feminine that leads them into a mega church because it it really fits a lot of patriarchal conditioning. Nobody wants my version, the true version. And I'm not saying like the true version because I, Lauren Nicole Joyce, am the authority on the feminine. I'm saying the true version because this is the version of the feminine that was suppressed. This is the version of the feminine that was around for hundreds of thousands of years before patriarchy was created. Because let us not forget, patriarchy was created, it's not naturally occurring. This is the version of the feminine that we see, that we saw across the globe through every culture and society until the patriarchy was forced down our throat. So, what I had to really sit with was like, am I willing to let their wrong, harmful version of the feminine be the only version that's out there or be the loudest version. No. So chances are you're like me and you're sitting at this point of like watching and having seen a lot of personal and spiritual development merge into the alt-right pipeline, a lot of concepts, a lot of um, spaces that used to feel really good for you lean more Christian or more alt-right. And you're like, where the hell do I fit in? Well, one, you fit in here, right? So I want to invite you to join me inside the Self-Centered Woman Society, which really is this new kind of collaborative space for women where, yes, you're receiving content, embodiment practices. It's rich with sisterhood. You also have an opportunity to host your own workshops so that you can get paid, get hired, collaborate. You can join us at themagneticwoman.com/society. And if you're sitting there and you feel like you're at a threshold, quite frankly, and you're like, I I want to really take my place in my feminine leadership and really take my place in leading like the movement, the revolution that I'm here to lead. I really want to invite you to the Threshold Private Intensive. This is my absolute favorite fucking way to work with women. It's one-on-one. It is deeply customized. It is the most powerful way, quite frankly, I work with clients. It's 2 days in person. Honestly, it's equivalent to 6 to 12 months worth of mentorship within 2 days. It's unlike anything else, right? You will emerge so deeply rooted in your feminine leadership, so deeply rooted in what you're here to create, who this next evolution of yourself is. So spaces are really limited and there is 25% off through February 1st. So if you're listening to this after February 1st, sorry, if you're catching this right when the podcast comes out, you have just a little bit of time to secure your spot. You can go to themagneticwoman.com/threshold to claim one of the intensives. And I do have virtual intensives available. So if you're like, I want to do that, but I'm not in a space to travel for whatever reason, you can claim one of the virtual intensives. So again, I guess if nothing else, I just want you to say if you have seen a lot of personal and spiritual development go down the alt-right pipeline, be co-opted and corrupted by MAGA and evangelical Christianity, you are correct. That has happened. And it has happened not because we're bad or wrong or stupid or because, like, how a lot of personal and spiritual development is framed as like just kind of like out there and culty and you have no grasp on reality. That happened because of a lot of our really positive qualities. Those of us who find ourselves in these spaces, right? We're optimistic, we're forward thinking, we are hungry for knowledge and information. We want to better ourselves, we want to better our lives. You know, the more you learn about yourself, the more you want, to help others. And so have compassion with yourself if you found yourself in these spaces. And again, like one of my best friends, she and I talk about this all the time because she really got into personal development via wellness, like wellness culture. And she's like, yeah, I was really close to kind of going down that road and really being in that pipeline. And I don't really know what it was that pulled me out. And so, again, these pipelines are designed for that to happen to you. And I would recommend, whether or not you were raised religiously, we all have deep religious conditioning because the patriarchy and patriarchal religion has been hand in hand since Constantine, the emperor of Rome, made Christianity the religion of the Roman Empire. Okay, I could do a whole other podcast episode on that, which I probably will. And if you want to hear that podcast episode, definitely let me know. So if you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could leave a 5-star review and share it on social media, tag me. I really think that, you know, we have to we have to pull the curtain back on these things, right? Like we have to talk about them. We have to talk about like, yeah, a lot of people got pulled into the alt-right pipeline through personal and spiritual development. Yeah, maybe you did. And that's how it's designed, right? That's they designed it that way. And it happens. And like, how do you climb out of it? How do you crawl your way back to, something that feels truly aligned for you? So that feels complete for me. Going off of my splenic manifestor authority here. And I will see you next time for the next episode.